Hello, friend. This is To Live the Truth, the podcast. My name is Ryan Clawson. In this show, we sit down to dive a little deeper into the concepts in my book, To Live the Truth, which you can read for free at ryantclawson.com/tolivthetruth. In each episode, we address one chapter in a sort of book club format. This week, my amazing wife Allie and I talk about Chapter 5, Endless Science.
Okay, so we know that truth is essential for us to have successful, joy-filled lives. And just this last chapter, we talked about how we can find truth in living works, in living media, especially books. And we've defined living books as content filled with ideas that nourish the mind and the soul. And yeah, it's important to consume that so that we can align with truth.
So we ended that last episode talking about how what we get out of living media are great and vital ideas, right? That's what we're feeding our minds when we consume living media. And when we're consuming twaddle, we're feeding our minds small, petty ideas, sometimes nonsensical ideas, and it influences our worldview. But this chapter that follows is called Endless Science. We've also entered into a new section of the book titled The Nature of Knowledge. To summarize this chapter, we'll read the summary at the back of the chapter again, as we have done. So, here's the summary. Two essential tools in our pursuit of truth are 1. Reason, 2. Observation. While both are powerful, they have their limits, leading some to excessive sign-seeking skepticism. This doubtful inclination stems from a mistaken assumption that one must know a thing to be true before believing it, that knowledge is a destination. In reality, it is a journey in which each bit of truth we discover becomes a new vantage point, revealing a fresh view into the distant scenes of endless knowledge. Okay, so let's read the poem by Alexander Pope that features in this chapter. We already talked about this in chapter 3, but we only quoted the first 4 lines. And in this chapter, I have the entire poem just plopped in there on the page. So I will read the whole thing. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep or taste not the Pierian spring. There shallow draughts intoxicate the brain, and drinking largely sobers us again. Fired at first sight with what the muse imparts, in fearless youth we tempt the heights of arts, while from the bounded level of our mind short views we take, nor see the lengths behind. But more advanced, behold with strange surprise new distant scenes of endless science rise. So pleased at first the towering Alps we try, mount o'er the vales and seem to tread the sky. The eternal snows appear already past, and the first clouds and mountains seem the last. But those attained, we tremble to survey the growing labors of the lengthened way. The increasing prospect tires our wandering eyes. Hills peep o'er hills, and Alps on Alps arise. So obviously I'm pulling out of that poem the title of this chapter, which is Endless Science. And it should be clarified that science in this context means knowledge. The word science, that is what the word means. Omniscience, meaning all-knowing. Omni, all, science, knowledge.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, what do you have to say about the poem?
Every time I think about this poem or hear you quote any lines from it, I think of the picture that we have hanging up in our son's room. It's called The Traveler Above a Sea of Clouds, or I've also heard it titled Wanderer Looking Over a Sea of Fog, but it's by Caspar David Friedrich. Every time I hear that poem, this is what's in my head. And I love it because this man is on the center of the page and he's at the top of a cliff. And I just imagine he's made this journey all the way up there. And then all you see is just
an unexplored expanse.
Yes. Yes. I wonder what he's thinking. Is he enjoying the journey? Is he happy about the endless expanse and the adventure before him? Or is he dreading it and bummed?
I love that painting too. And I love the phrase in this poem, "But those attained we tremble to survey the growing labors of the lengthened way." So I think, yeah, is he standing there confident and resolute that he can go on in this seemingly endless journey? Or is he at this moment standing on this peak trembling to survey just how much of the journey still remains ahead of him? It's pretty cool.
And it's cool because the cliff he's on is nothing compared to the rest of the scenery. And I think that applies to us because knowledge and truth, we can't even get close to attaining it all. We have to just keep climbing and start where we're at, but there's just no end.
Exactly. So we've talked about this poem a lot, but someone hearing it for the first time would probably be pretty lost. We've already defined in episode 3, Pierian spring, which means the source of knowledge. But essentially, he's talking about a little learning is a dangerous thing, and he kind of repeats himself throughout this poem to give you a better idea. Fired at first sight with what the muse imparts, in fearless youth we tempt the heights of arts. Basically saying that when we first receive a moment of inspiration or we learn something new, it fires us. It gets us so excited that we think we've figured it all out, maybe. Same thing later where it says, so pleased at first the towering Alps we try, mount o'er the vales and seem to tread the sky. The eternal snows appear already past, and the first clouds and mountains seem the last. So here he's just reiterating that when we've accomplished some great feat of learning, graduated from school, gotten your degree, or had some big learning experience, traveled somewhere and seen a bunch of things, it's tempting to believe that now we've got it all figured out, that now we've attained the heights, that all the clouds and mountains seem to last. Anyway, it's just so cool. But then he also reiterates that when we reach that new peak of knowledge or of understanding, it really only just provides a new vantage point to see the expanse of knowledge that remains to be attained, right? That we have not yet explored or learned yet. And just that imagery of hills peeping over hills and Alps on Alps arise. That's the point at which I feel like this painting doesn't quite describe it, because it doesn't seem like any of those mountains in the distance are higher than the one he's standing on. But I do like to imagine learning being just a constant upward hike.
Yeah.
Just every peak gives you a fresh view of the next higher peak that remains ahead. Anyway, it's cool.
That is cool.
I use that poem in this chapter to illustrate an important aspect of learning that can easily be forgotten or overlooked, which is that knowledge is not a destination, it is a journey. And this is why this poem also features in chapter 3, because in that setting we talked about the overconfidence in our own understanding, which definitely appears in this poem, right? Someone who has finally climbed to the top of that cliff, top of that mountain, may seem justified in believing that they already know it all. But there's another aspect of it that I address in this chapter, which is perhaps somebody has reached that mountaintop thinking that it is going to be the last destination, and has that experience of it opening up to their view just how much further they have to go, and they may get discouraged at that experience. And they may begin to doubt whether knowledge is ever attainable at all. And they may refuse to act. They may refuse to keep going until they can receive undeniable proof that the direction they're walking in is the correct direction, or that the next mountain peak will be the last one. I call it sign seeking. It's this insistence that I will not believe until I know, which is funny when you think about it. There's this false assumption that knowledge precedes belief. That's silly. Knowledge is a more sure thing than belief. So the natural progression should be belief grows into knowledge, not the other way around, right?
Mhm.
Alma says that straight up to the Zoramites. He says, if a man know a thing, then he has no cause to believe it. And how greater condemnation comes to a person who knows a thing and does not live by it than one who just has cause to believe.
Like, we really can't know anything. You're not going to be able to act on anything if you don't choose to believe in something.
We all are believing in something. Your life will center around something, whether you choose it or not. And to go back to the misnomer of modern natural science, the truth is, science, as it is modernly carried out, has taken this place of faith. We'll talk about this more in the coming episodes, but when you think about the scientific method, it is a powerful source of knowledge. That's undeniable. And that kind of ties back into observation and reason. The scientific method is really the essence of empiricism. It's this systemized procedure we've developed to reliably come to conclusions based on our observations, right? If you perform this task and get the same result every single time over multiple attempts, you can say with pretty solid certainty that you have arrived at a true conclusion. That is modern science. And it's great, but it doesn't answer all the questions. And at the end of the day, we're still in this journey as a human race regarding our scientific discoveries. Some of the things that we think we know suddenly become uncertain as science progresses. Certain things that we were told by the scientific experts in generations past have been debunked, in some cases completely reversed. It's really just this is life. It's about trust and belief.
When we talk about believing, that maybe sounds very religious. And I think, yes, it definitely applies to God and religion. But like you were saying, any laws we live by, the law of gravity, all of our math, science, all of that is the same thing. We can't be 100% certain and know for sure that is true, but we believe it and we use it and we build our knowledge off of it. But I think that's important to remember, that it's not just a religious person that is believing and acting on these ideas and the truth that they receive. It's everyone.
Exactly.
I was just thinking about the questions at the bottom, and it says, what has my perception been of knowledge as a destination or a journey? And I feel like mine personally, just with public school and growing up, I've totally viewed this as a destination. You get through school, you get good grades, you graduate, you're done. You know everything. You're an adult, you're done learning. But now, as an adult, I realize how little I do know. And now that I'm starting to homeschool, I've tried to change my mindset to viewing knowledge as a journey. We always say in our homeschool, make learning a lifestyle. Instead of just getting to that end goal, just drudging through it, get to the top of the hill, we know that there's no end. And we're trying to just enjoy the process and enjoy every day.
It's a big mindset shift.
Yeah. And it makes life just more enjoyable.
No, I love that. That's awesome. And that makes me want to ask the first question that we have, which is, what roles have reason, observation, and skepticism played in my learning? So now that you've made that shift and are actively involved in the business of learning every day, how would you answer that question?
We use a Charlotte Mason approach in our homeschool, and she really stresses the importance of nature study for especially younger kids. So instead of just getting thrown into textbooks, she just wants them to observe and explore for themselves. And then when you get to a certain point, you bring in the textbooks and more of the logic side of it, the part that you're going to be thinking and reasoning about. And I just think they're so important. Like they go hand in hand. So when I'm doing homeschool, I make sure that we're learning about things, we're talking about them, we're thinking about them, but we're also going out and just observing, and we're watching people and talking to people. I just think they complement each other well.
Observation and reason.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. What about skepticism? Would you say skepticism plays a part in your daily learning?
It's hard because I don't really draw attention to it. I don't actually think about that. But I'm sure, well, yeah, I know for a fact that I'm not just applying everything I read. Often, I'm probably more skeptic and less open than you are even. I feel like I read something and I'm like, oh, that doesn't align with what I've always believed or what I've been taught. But I don't know, I have an argument for it and an argument against it. Like you say in your book, it is helpful to have some skepticism instead of just applying everything. Like, can you imagine just being a sponge and just allowing every bit of advice or ideas that come in? It's impossible to live by everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you mentioned a couple examples from scripture. And I love what you say right here. You say, our own consequences for maintaining a skeptical, sign-seeking attitude may not be as dramatic as what befell Korihor and Zacharias, but it may be a scourge of silence nonetheless. I just think that's really cool that if you're not open to ideas, if you're so closed off, then yeah, you just may be at a standstill. You may not progress at all. You'll be living in this silence and darkness.
I just have this picture of a sign seeker. And I want to make that distinction clear because I do believe skepticism is highly valuable in learning. And I wouldn't even take pride, like you say, I'm more open than skeptical, or at least compared to you.
Compared to me, I wouldn't say you're more open than skeptical,
right.
Like
it's not inherently good or bad to be skeptical versus open-minded. There's going to be a sweet spot there somewhere. But anyway, I like the lesson from Korihor's story particularly because he was definitely a sign seeker, right? He comes to Alma and he says, if you show me a sign from heaven that there is a God, then I will believe. And Alma's response is just fantastic, where he says, you have had signs enough, right? You've got the testimony of so many trusted people around you, not to mention all physical things denote that there is a God. The movement of the planets, the trees and the seasons and the animals, just life itself can be traced back to God. They can be taken as signs that there is a grand creator. And then I emphasize that the sign seeker takes this position that after they receive one more sign, then it will be enough to believe. And people who don't agree with what Alma said there call that philosophy the God of the gaps. Have you heard of that before? It's this, they say, all you're saying is there has to be some creator of all these things. So there's a gap there. Let's just insert God into that gap. And I understand that, but that very complaint is an indicator that you are probably a sign seeker. Mm-hmm. Obviously, what they're saying is, I want irrefutable proof. I don't want just a gap. I want to see God there. The question that I would pose to them is how much proof? What would you constitute as proof? And then the question would also be, do you think that your mortal mind, especially in its current rigid, insistent state, could even be capable of seeing or reasoning out that proof of a creator were it given to you? You see what I'm saying? The God of the gaps is a sign-seeking attitude. And it seems counterintuitive because if you want to have that gap become less of a gap and become more of a clear revelation to you, you have to begin by believing in what you've already got. If you just sit back and refuse to move until the evidence is presented to you, you're taking the very path to ensure that never happens. So we've explored these tools for discerning whether an idea that's presented itself to you is true or not. Observation and reason being perhaps the most powerful tools. But they are limited. They are not able to take you the full way there. In the next several chapters, we'll be discussing what I believe is the missing ingredient that takes you the rest of the way, especially on the big questions of life, which, spoiler alert, is faith, essentially the opposite of skepticism. So that's what we'll talk about next time.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks again for sitting down and talking about this, love.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. Additional resources can be found on my website at ryantclawson.com. If you have any questions or comments, please post them in the comments section and we will address them in a future episode. Also, please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to this podcast. That makes us easier to find. Finally, I wish you peace and success, and I hope you can join me next week.